Hello everyone, this is Insta here. I hope you guys are all doing great. A little bit of a different video because I just had to make this one. I just came from watching a very talked about movie, and that being Iron Lung, and I just had to talk about it. But of course, I'm not gonna be doing just a normal movie review right now. I'm actually gonna compare it to another film that came out not too long ago, also made by a pretty well-known YouTuber, that is being the film Shelby Oaks by Chris Stuckman. And I really wanted to talk about these two films because they're pretty special. They're worth talking about because these aren't just, two run-of-the-mill films. These are YouTubers that made it their goal, that made it their almost, part of their life's work to make these two films and just do whatever they could to bring their passion project to life, and they did, which is awesome. And I really just needed to get my thoughts on them real quick. Now, before I get into the films, what is my history with both Markiplier and Chris Stuckman? Chris Stuckman I've been following for around 10 years. I remember stumbling upon his channel right in the middle of when he was doing his Hilariosity reviews, which were still to this day so great, so funny, so good. Really enjoy watching them from time to time. And yeah, I'm fully aware that he has come under a lot of heat. He's taken lots of backlash for the way he's doing his content right now, which I personally understand. I also don't think he made the right choice in terms of what he wants to focus on, in terms of the way he presents his movie reviews these days. I also do think there is lots of stuff to talk about in that regard, but I'm not going to focus on it in this video because you find tons of videos on YouTube about all that stuff. But anyway, Chris Stuckman, he's been sort of a guy that I have been looking up to the past 10 years because I also have this huge interest in film, in writing, whatever, all that stuff. So I really enjoyed his earlier work and not as much his newer work right now. But of course, the fact that he made his own movie, working together with Mike Flanagan from all people, is really impressive. So obviously, I'm gonna watch it and I'm gonna, be I'm gonna have my thumbs up. I'm gonna keep my fingers crossed for this guy, that he actually made a good film, and that this is gonna be the starting block for a very nice career in the movie directing business. Markiplier is a little bit of a different story. He, for a long time, fell into that category where I knew he was out there, but I'd never really watched him. Don't ask me why, but I never really got around to really watching his stuff until like a few years ago, where I started, watching his playthroughs, especially his Trying to Laugh challenges. I really enjoyed those, and I saw that this wasn't like a big stuck-up guy. He was actually very down to earth, and he also had this big, huge passion project about the video game Iron Lung that he wanted to make, and of course, hence why I also really wanted to see this film. So, very briefly, my history with both Markiplier and Chris Stuckman. Now, these two films, I'm gonna be judging them on several points, namely the plot, the acting, the pacing, directing, the writing, and the lasting impact that it had on me. Because a very important thing, personally, I think, you want films or stories in general to stick with them the moment that people finish reading or listening or watching them. Those are going to be my 6 points of interest that I'm going to be talking about. Very quickly, the plot. We're going to start off with Iron Lung. The plot is, if you know the video game, you know what it is. In the distant future, a strange apocalyptic event called the Quiet Rapture takes place, which causes for all the stars and all the planets to just disappear. They vanish. And humanity, only spread out over a handful of space stations, has been trying to find new worlds to, inhabit. And they stumble upon this moon that has an anomaly, and this anomaly being an ocean of blood. It literally has an ocean of blood on this moon, which is an awesome concept, if you ask me. And they sent this convict, played by Markiplier, into this grotesquely looking submarine and just finding stuff in this ocean, find clues, find stuff they can work with if this planet is inhabitable or not, and you get this journey with that. And you get this journey with Markiplier's character Simon inside the submarine for 2 hours. Shelby Oaks, the plot is a little bit more basic. It's about this girl who has gone missing, and her sister is trying to search for her. The girl was part of this paranormal investigation YouTube group. It's kind of like an homage to all those videos you saw popping up on YouTube in the 2000s of, you know, these very shaky home video, low quality, huge pixel-esque videos of, you know, Bigfoot or alien sightings or ghost sightings, and it's kind of an homage to that, which I really enjoyed. And it's about this girl, this woman looking for her younger sister because she has been missing for years now, and she believes there's some paranormal reason behind all this. And of course she stumbles upon these huge mysteries while looking for her sister, which is a much more basic and bare bones plot and not that much out there if you ask me. So for the plot alone, I'm 100% gonna go for Iron Lung. Not really like, oh, it's in space and the stars and the planets are vanished and oh, science fiction. Not really that, but just because I think it's freaking original and very creative. Iron Lung has a plot that I've never heard or seen before, ever, if you ask me. Shelby Oaks is a plot that if you explain it to someone, people are gonna link it to other stories they've seen before. Which isn't bad, because these days, coming up with a brand new original story is one of the hardest things you can do. To the point where it's basically impossible. People are always gonna compare it to others. Even Iron Lung, if you try hard enough, you can compare it to other films and other stories. But just the plot of, you know, The Ocean of Blood, really cool, really cool. So point goes to Iron Lung. Now the second one, acting. Now I'm gonna be very honest with you. Both these films kind of suffer from the same problem, but also have the same strength. The problem with both of these films is that sometimes, especially in the earlier scenes of the film, people are overacting a bit. Both with the characters of Shelby Oaks, both with the characters of Iron Lung. And this isn't a critique to the acting, this is more of a critique to the directing, I'd say, or to the script. Because it literally tells them to, you know, shout or scream or cry and whatever. But both these films suffer from, you know, being just a little bit too much in the earlier stages. Because it's the beginning of the film. You want to get people to ease in on the story and not just bombard them with insane overdramatic stuff from the get-go, because it's going to get numb after a while. That being said, both of these films do have great acting to the later scenes of both movies. From the halfway point all the way to the end, both Shelby Oaks and Iron Lung, I think, really have good acting. Markiplier, especially in Iron Lung, is great. Honestly, this guy blew me away. Holy shit, this guy can act. Honestly. Every time he gets angry, or he gets frustrated, or he gets scared, I believed him 100%. And I've heard many people, you know, talk about like, I can't not see Markiplier. And I understand. In the sense of, you know, this guy's been around for so long. He uses the same voice. He also, you know, he has the same hairstyle. No, that's not a critique by any means. But he does look like Markiplier, but just in a different outfit. So I can understand that criticism. Nevertheless, he does, I think, an amazing job of acting in this film. Honestly. If I would have seen this film and I wouldn't know who Markiplier is, I'd say the main guy did a great job. Honestly. Shelby Oaks, basically the same thing. Camilla Sullivan, I haven't seen her work yet, because these are of course actual actors, if you know what I mean. Markiplier technically isn't an actor, but Camilla Sullivan's character in Shelby Oaks, also a terrific job. Same thing. In the first stages, she can overdo it a little bit, but from the moment the film passes its halfway points and you go to the later stages of the story, she does a great job. Honestly, both movies have very solid acting, just a little bit of, you know, a balancing problem. So in a way, I gotta give both Shelby Oaks and Iron Lung a point in terms of acting. Now moving on to the pacing. This is a tricky one, because these are two very different movies. Yeah, they're horror and everything, but the pacing is very different, because Shelby Oaks is a very short film. I think it's only like 1 hour and 20 minutes if you exclude the credits. Iron Lung is a longer film, it's almost 2 hours. Shelby Oaks switches constantly from location to location, from scene to scene. Iron Lung is constantly in a confined space, with the exception of several flashbacks. But the entire film is the submarine. Shelby Oaks has lots of places to go to, so it's kind of, different. If I tell you which film is gonna be 1 hour and 20 minutes and which film is gonna be 2 hours, just judging from the many different locations and scenes you get to see in the film, you're probably gonna switch them around, and I wouldn't blame you. I'd say Iron Lung has a pacing issue because it takes place in a very confined space and it's nearly 2 hours, which is long. And there is some decent character build-up, I'm not gonna lie. It's not like I was bored, but I have heard many people online saying that the first half of this film is boring, Iron Lung. And I can see why. It's not like I'm gonna say like, nah, they're overreacting. I can perfectly see why your mainstream moviegoer would find the first half of this film boring, because not much happens. There's a lot of build-up, there's some suspense, and there's some teasing, but there's also long scenes of Markiplier's character just sitting and grunting and cursing and crawling and walking around and investigating, discovering, and that's cool for like a while, but it takes a little bit too long. That being said, the second half of the film greatly picks up, honestly. And personally, I was never bored, but I did feel the pacing drag. I wasn't bored because I was very intrigued with the plot and I really wanted to know what was gonna happen, but I completely get the criticism. Shelby Oaks, on the other hand, is different. It's a shorter film, even though the story has us more to give, because it jumps from location to location to location. Also, the opening credits only start after around 15 to 20 minutes, if I'm not mistaken, which I thought was pretty cool, but if you're gonna do that, you're probably gonna be expecting a longer film. That being said, Shelby Oaks, I think, has a very strong opening, because they choose for a documentary-esque style, found footage slash documentary, which is pretty new. I haven't seen that one before. The film starts and you almost think like this film is gonna be like, a mockumentary sort of, but then after the first 20 minutes it just shifts to your mainstream movie. And the shift, I understand, but it kind of marks the point where a lot of people lose interest, because the thing that made the film special kind of just stops. And what you get is a huge middle chunk of this film, which, and I do have to agree, is pretty boring. Other than with Iron Lung, I understand why people would find it boring, but I personally wasn't bored. Shelby Oaks, the entire middle portion of this film, I was bored. I'm not gonna lie about this. It's just the main character going from place to place, a lot of silent scenes, a lot of discovering, much like with Iron Lung, but the only difference is I was really bummed out that Chris Stuckman chose for a very basic and very predictable approach to the horror genre, because it felt like I was just watching a boring version of The Conjuring after a while. And I'm not gonna lie, the amount of cheap jump scares in this film kinda started to annoy me after a while. And it was frustrating because I know Chris Stuckman made lots of comments in the past about the fact that he also hates jump scares. So I was like, why is his film filled with them? Because I really don't like jump scares. I really don't. Not because they scare me, but just because I think they're so boring and stupid and just pointless. If you want to scare me, then properly scare me, commit to it. And the middle portion of Shelby Oaks just has nothing going for it. And that's weird because the film is already very short. That being said, for both films, the moment the third act starts, it greatly picks up. Iron Lung goes insane. Insane, the last act. It's batshit crazy. I'm not gonna spoil anything, but it's batshit crazy, the last third. Shelby Oaks doesn't go completely insane, but it starts to reveal what is going on, and it does kind of give you a hit or miss vibe. Because once it's revealed in Shelby Oaks what's going on, you either go with it or you say, this is just stupid. But it does pick up the pacing. From the last, let's say the last 20 minutes of Shelby Oaks, I was invested again. I was invested in the beginning, I was invested in the end, but the entire middle part was just a slog. Iron Lung started off very slow, but I was at least somewhat invested. So in terms of pacing, I gotta give it to Iron Lung. Now directing. Both films are actually very well directed. They're very different movies. Again, very different. It's a tough time to really compare them in this sense. But there's one very clear distinction. Markiplier chose for a very personal directing approach. There's a lot of close-ups, a lot of very experimental twists and turns with the lenses, and I really like that. While Chris Stuckman chose a much more artistic approach. You know, you have these huge wide shots, a couple of tracking shots here and there. You got these very clever pans and zooms, and you know, some cool editing techniques that makes you feel like you're watching a proper horror film. And that's cool. Both films are directed well. I can't really tell you which one is better, because the movies don't suffer from bad directing. The only critique that I can give to the directing is the point that I approached before, which is just that the first parts of each film suffer from some hammy overacting at times. And that is most definitely a directing point. But apart from that, the way it's filmed, the way the people act, the way it's all shown to us, each in its own way is good, honestly. Both films don't have a point where I was like, what the hell were they thinking in terms of camera work or in terms of direction. They look differently. Iron Lung feels more personal, while Shelby Oaks feels more artistic. And I gotta give them both props for that. So both Shelby Oaks and Iron Lung, they get a solid point for directing. Now the writing. And this is gonna be a fun one. Now the scripts for both films are very different. Yes, they're both horror films, but I'm gonna tell you this. I consider Shelby Oaks to be more of a horror movie than Iron Lung. Iron Lung is gory as shit. Like, Jesus Christ. The blood in that film is insane. There's such... I keep repeating myself without spoiling anything, but the latter half of Iron Lung is so insane when it comes to gore and blood and body horror that I would just cringing in my seat at times, which is awesome, because I've watched lots of horror in my time. I'm not easily cringeable, if that even makes sense. Iron Lung, props to you, guy, props to you. But Shelby Oaks most definitely is the more traditional horror movie. In terms of it, feeling very much like, the Conjuring universe. The jump scares, the atmosphere, the plot, it feels more as a horror film. So both have different tasks. One is just about adapting a game and staying faithfully. The other one is just a brand new story, but clearly based and inspired by things that came before it. That being said, the writing. How's the writing? I think Iron Lung has to take the cake. Iron Lung tries to adapt a video game, a very basic video game, with a huge amount of lore to it. And tries to condense it in 2 hours. Now, I think the writing for Iron Lung is good. It's not great, it's not bad, it's just solid. The freak out moments happen a lot, maybe a little bit too much for it to lose impact after a while. But the film itself really is properly structured. I understood everyone's position. Nobody made decisions that I didn't understand. There are lots of things that happen though, especially in the latter half, that would make more sense if you understood where the game was coming from. There's lots of bits of lore and explanations that you don't get in the film that would have been handy. The writing in Shelby Oaks, on the other hand, is pretty subpar, I gotta say. It's weird. This film is actually made to seem very artistic and very smart, but the more you dive into it, the more you start to dissect it, it kind of makes less sense. And stuff kind of feels more idiotic. There are scenes where if you view them separately, they work, but if you view them in the overall story, they don't. I mean, the script really is Shelby Oaks' its biggest enemy. And I know both Mark and Chris wrote their own films, and that's their full right, honestly. No one's gonna stop them. It's both their debut films, it's both of their babies, they do whatever they want, and they have the right to do that. But Chris quite obviously tried to make 3 or 4 different films mashed into one. One is just a cool, very cool and unique mockumentary. The other one is your bare bones basic jump scare horror movie. Another one is a monster flick. And the other one is a psychological thriller. Now these 4 can work, but the transitions between those genres within the very tight space of 80 minutes feels very rushed. Maybe a little spoiler, but the moment the monsters start to show up, it gave me a huge whiplash. Because I didn't expect it to be that kind of film. And looking back at it, yeah, the monsters were set up. It's not like it came out of nowhere, but it just didn't feel like the type of movie I was watching. And I think it would have been stronger if the whole twist at the end would have been more than just, you know. Okay, spoiler right now. I can't do this without spoilers. Okay, I can't do it without spoilers. You'll be warned for Shelby Oaks. I think the movie would have worked better for me personally if the whole twist wasn't just demons. You know? I mean, I'm all for the supernatural, I'm all for the paranormal stuff, but there are better things than just, you know, demons. Because it's always demons these days, you know what I mean? It's always demons. And it kind of has a double twist, and I do like that. The film, I think, is its best at the beginning and at the end. The middle part is a slog, and that's just, I can understand when writing it, it feels like you're building up tension, but watching it, it just felt like a bore. But the strongest parts, for me personally, was the beginning, which was the whole mockumentary style, and the ending, which had a shocking twist. Now, I'm gonna use the word shocking because it's the type of ending that leaves you, you know, it should leave you feeling bad. It isn't a happy ending. Both of these films don't have happy endings, but you know, that's the kind of thing with horror movies, you kind of expect them to have like a shitty ending. A shitty ending in terms of, you know, bad stuff happening in the story. And it does. There is a reveal around 20 minutes before the film ends, let's say 20 to 15 minutes before the movie ends, there is a reveal, and the reveal is kind of horrifying, but it's resolved very quickly. The climax of Shelby Oaks I found very underwhelming, because very little happens, and you're instantly into the denouement, and I was wondering, is this really how it's going to end, because that was going to be a huge anticlimax. But then the final 5 minutes, even less I'd say, maybe even 3 minutes of the film, flip everything on its head, which is good, which is cool, because I didn't necessarily think that that was a possibility, the ending, the true ending that we got, and it was good, but it seems very, and I do mean extremely, far-fetched. And I try to give an explanation to the ending, but it feels very random. That being said, it's the type of ending that when you think of it, it sounds cool, but if you see it, it just kind of feels like, yeah, okay, but it's such a stretch, you know, it's such a stretch. I'm not gonna say that Iron Lung's ending was perfect. I think Iron Lung's ending was more rushed, but it made sense thematically. Script-wise, most definitely goes to Iron Lung, just because Iron Lung is also much more self-aware and it knows what it is, while Shelby Oaks tries to be something, or tries to come off as something that it isn't. And that always rubs me the wrong way, I'd say. So, script-wise, definitely Iron Lung. I think we already have a winner here. My lasting thoughts, guys. Honestly, for Shelby Oaks, I was disappointed. Chris Stuckman, for all his faults, for all the critique he's getting these last couple of years, I mean, he did it, and that's cool, that's really cool. But Shelby Oaks was a disappointing debut. He really comes off as a good director, like really a director with a vision, but he's just not a script writer. He really just isn't. The lasting thoughts of Shelby Oaks were most doubtedly the beginning, which was the whole mockumentary with the found footage, and the ending, which had like this very gruesome, brutal twist happening all the way at the end. The only way that stuck with me, because it wasn't what I was expecting after watching the whole film. I thought it was gonna have a much safer ending, but it didn't, which is cool. And that kind of, you know, stuck with me. Every time a film has, you know, a bummer ending where I think like, ah, god damn it, sucks, you know, it stays with me. So props to him. The ending did make me feel something. Iron Lung most definitely is just the plot that sticks with me. The whole idea of the Blood Ocean, of the Quiet Rapture, the lore, the mysterious characters, the mind control playing. The trippy mind control stuff that appears to be going on at certain points. Really cool stuff. It's slow, the middle part. I'd say the first and middle part are pretty slow, but I call it a slow burn. I wouldn't call it boring, otherwise than Shelby Oaks, which is in its middle part most definitely boring in my eyes. Iron Lung is much more a slow burn, and the ending, total insanity. Total insanity, gory as shit. But I loved it. When looking at these films as a YouTuber, as a YouTube lover, you know, as a fan of both Chris and Mark, I'd say props to them. They did a great job at establishing their dream, at working for it, and just doing it. They actually made what they always wanted to make, and that's awesome. That's great, honestly. That's great. I respect them both. They deserve a lot of respect, even though you're not a fan of their work, or you're not a fan of their YouTube videos, their content, whatever, their persona. You gotta give them props. They did what they wanted to make. Awesome. Cool. But when brushing all that aside and just looking at these two films as just two films, just like all the countless other ones, they're subpar to medium at best, in my opinion. Iron Lung is very trippy, it's very cool, it's very new, it's very creative, but due to the hammy overacting at times and the extremely slow burn-esque at the beginning and the middle portion of a film, and also at times where you just can't really not see Markiplier, even though he's acting great. He does a great job acting, but still you have a hard time, you know, not seeing Markiplier. It's a medium film. It's mid-tier for me. It's mid-tier. I would give it like, you know, a 7 out of 10. Somewhere like that. Shelby Oaks, on the other hand, I would see once and never again. I can see rewatching Iron Lung with friends in the future. I can personally never see myself rewatching Shelby Oaks. And it's just purely because of how slow the script is, how boring the middle part of the film is, how it tries to be something that it isn't, and just with all the whiplashes on the tonal shifts in the film and the reveals that don't always make sense. Even though the ending did kind of win me over purely because of how unexpectedly brutal it was, I can't say that I recommend this film. If you're a huge Chris Stuckman fan and you've been following him for like so long, just like I have, you know, I've been following him for 10 years. If you're a huge fan of his, sure, go watch it. If you're a horror fan and you just want to watch everything, especially like if you're into the paranormal, conjuring stuff, all that, sure, go watch it. Go watch it. It has elements that haven't been done before, and that's very cool. But it should have stuck with those elements. I would give this film between a 5 and a 6. But definitely not higher than a 6. Definitely not. Because I just didn't enjoy myself watching it. I enjoyed myself with Iron Lung, I didn't enjoy myself with Shelby Oaks. That's just the brutally honest opinion. Guys, that was it. That was a longer one. Just spitballing, you know. What do you guys think? Did you enjoy Iron Lung? Did you enjoy Shelby Oaks? Which one do you prefer? Do you think they should make more of these? Let me know in the comments. I love a good debate. I love a good discussion. Anyways, see you later. Thanks everyone.